Welcome to another episode of the Frontier Journal. Today we will be traveling to Lat, Vietnam. This city is located in the central highlands of South Vietnam. With an elevation of 4,900 feet, Lat has a much cooler climate than the rest of Vietnam. This makes it attractive to tourists, and if you are in the area looking for places to stay, rest assured there are plenty of Western style accommodations and first world hotels to choose from. On top of this, there are restaurants on every corner that cater to tourists. Most of the Vietnamese who work at these establishments speak English as well, making it easy to navigate as a foreigner. To understand the history of Dalat and what makes it culturally significant, we must understand the conflicts and regimes that ruled in Vietnam over the last 1,000 years. Unfortunately, there is not enough time in any of my videos to cover the hundreds of conflicts and regime changes which took place in Vietnam. Entire documentaries could be made to cover a single conflict. So for these videos, I will discuss the most appropriate figures and conflicts, which should serve as a guide for anyone who wants to learn more. Let's get started. The name Dalat is derived from the language of the local ethnic group Lat, and its original meaning is stream of the Lat. During the French colonial era of Vietnam's history, which lasted from 1858 to 1954, the French government created a coat of arms with the Latin phrase Da alice laetitia alice temperium, which means it gives pleasure to some and freshness to others. But because this phrase was used on the official crest, many believe incorrectly that it was the original source of the city's name because it is a backronym for Dalat. While Dalat today is one of the most populous cities in Vietnam, with a population of roughly 650 to 700,000, for most of its history, Dalat was a sparsely populated region. This is because of local legends which claimed that evil spirits inhabited the region, as well as natural predators. While this legend repelled many Vietnamese people from occupying the area, the environment itself is made up of steep mountains, dense jungles, and a cooler climate, which actually repelled many Vietnamese people who are accustomed to the heat and humidity of the tropics. Even though the Vietnamese people had a small village populating Dalat, much of the credit for its discovery is actually given to French colonials who used the highlands as a resort center. Dr. Alexandre Jean Yersin is credited with finding the Lam Bien Plateau in 1893, eventually leading to the formation of Dalat in 1916. Dr. Yersin, who was born in Laval, Switzerland, September 22, 1863, and died in La Trang on March 1, 1943, is one of the most notable explorers and scientists to set foot in this region. Soon after his discovery of Dalat in 1894, Dr. Yersin would go on to make significant contributions to virology that would overshadow much of his other achievements as an explorer. But one could also say, without his explorer spirit and fearless drive, he wouldn't have been able to make these discoveries in the first place. So, Dr. Yersin went down in history for independently isolating the bacterium responsible for the 1894 Hong Kong plague, which is part of the third plague pandemic. The plague is known today as Yersinia pestis, named in his honor, and had three forms: bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic. Because the plague results from the bite of an infected flea, which lives as a parasite on rats, its spread was almost impossible to stop globally. And identifying the source was extremely difficult as well, since most of the people thought that the disease was linked to the rats and not the fleas living on them. Because this disease was so deadly and pervasive in Asia at the time, there are actually stories of Chinese people who would completely abandon their homes if they identified the presence of rats living inside. Without knowing the exact cause or source of the disease, many efforts to stop its spread were rendered ineffective. Dr. Yersin's contribution is significant because it led to extremely precise methods of fighting the disease, such as using pesticides on crops, pest control, and modern sanitation techniques. If you are only targeting rats, as many people were for thousands of years, then you are only curing a symptom and not the root cause. In time, thanks to his discovery, a vaccine would be developed by other scientists, saving millions of lives. It's difficult to overstate the significance of Dr. Yersin's discovery, but here I will try. In 2010, researchers in Germany proved through DNA evidence that Yersinia pestis was the cause of the bubonic plague, also known as Black Death, which caused the first, second, and of course third plague pandemics, which occurred throughout human history on all continents and is responsible for wiping out 50% of the European population between 1346 and 1353, additionally killing over 12 million Chinese and Indians between 1855 and 1960. On top of this, it is believed that the plague led to a rapid collapse in human population between 3450 and 3000 BC, known as the Neolithic Decline. For his effort, Alexandre was respected by the Vietnamese people thanks to his contributions in the medical field. He was called Mr. Ong Nam by the Vietnamese, and even after Vietnam won its independence from the French colonials, most of the monuments, universities, and even the streets named in his honor still remain. Today, his house in Nha Trang serves as the Yersin Museum, and the epitaph on his tombstone, located in Lausanne, Switzerland, describes him as a benefactor and humanist venerated by the Vietnamese. Now, during French colonialism, there were several Vietnamese uprisings, and Da Lat, due to its remoteness and climate, emerged as the leading candidate for capital of Indochina between 1937 and 1947. For context, French Indochina consisted of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, and the term Indochina refers to the intermingling of Indian and Chinese influences in the culture of this region. Because Da Lat provided the imperialists a form of safe space, this would shape the way Indo-Chinese lands were managed, leading to policy that many would consider out of touch with the rest of Vietnam. There were several reasons to select Da Lat as the capital of Indochina, but among others was that the French had several institutions established there already. Da Lat is home to several universities, a boarding school, and a military academy which served to foster and project Franco-Vietnamese cultural values on the rest of the region. The Vietnamese National Military Academy served as a form of West Point for Vietnamese officers, and the Cam Lai Airport Aviation School trained pilots. So while Saigon was the most populous and industrious part of Vietnam, Da Lat served as its cultural center towards the end of French colonialism. That is why today the architecture appears European in nature. The Da Lat railway station, built in 1938, was designed in the Art Deco style created by French architect and Reveron. There was also a series of 3 mansions built by the French, the first of which was purchased by the Vietnamese Emperor Bao Dai in 1949. The second mansion belonged to Governor of French Indochina Jean Decoux, built between 1933 and 1938. Finally, the third mansion was owned by Queen Nam Phong and is open to the public today. For those of you Westerners interested in visiting Vietnam but unsure of the political atmosphere towards Americans and Europeans, I will assure you that there is little animosity and many people appreciate foreign travelers because it supports the local economy. Another reason Vietnam is more open to visitors than in the past is that the Vietnamese government underwent significant governmental and economic reforms in the 90s, essentially removing a lot of the hardline communists from office and refocusing their economy from being state-controlled to being more capitalistic in nature. Today, Da Lat is a peaceful city with several open-air markets and tourist attractions. The streets are packed with tourists and first-world accommodations. Many of the structures built by the French remain to this day, and their architecture is influential in the region. Thanks for traveling with the Frontier Journal.